friend Alex here, we are starting Bourbon Krewe. We are drinking Sam Houston 12 year right now. And in front of us each is our favorite bottle, our go-to bottle during the week. I chose Bullet Bourbon. And Alex, introduce yourself and what are you drinking over there?
So I'm Alex. Well, I'm drinking the same thing you are. I'm drinking the Sam Houston. It's quite good. My go-to daily bourbon is Buffalo Trace. I tell anybody who's thinking about getting into bourbon that that's the bourbon I would start out with. It's very easy to drink. You can drink it neat, drink it on ice. It's really, really, to me, just a very easy bourbon to drink. But that was kind of where I started out with drinking bourbon anyways. So.
You started upriver, man. That's a good one to start with.
Well, where I'm from New Orleans, hence our name Bourbon Krewe, which
right.
We can probably have a whole episode on just New Orleans in general.
I married a New Orleans girl, so I'm familiar.
So, but in New Orleans, this was on every grocery store shelf when it first came out. Around when I was in college, when this came out, it was on every grocery store shelf. So when I thought bourbon, I thought that and didn't even know anything about the Buffalo Trace distillery. I didn't know what Weller was. I didn't know what any of these allocated bourbons were at the time. And it's all but allocated at this point.
Yeah. So for me, I started much harsher than you. So Jack Daniels was my first sip of bourbon or whiskey in that case was outside of an Abilene Christian football game. I was with two of my buddies. We had a fake ID. We had absconded with a Jack Daniels bottle, and we were passing it around. Ooh. And it was rough. I did not like whiskey. I thought that was about as bad as it got. We ended up shoving it down my pants because if you remember Gerbeau jeans, which were nice and puffy back in the day,
man.
And I wasn't filling up my pants. At that age.
Some things never change.
Yeah, that's right. So I walk in with a bottle of Jack Daniels in my pants, and who do I first see is my youth minister as I walk in, and I had to talk with him for about 10 minutes with whiskey on my breath, a nice little buzz, trying to figure it out. And lots changed since then, but some hasn't. But that was my first brush with the brown sauce.
That sounds like a story out of like an 80s like pop culture movie or something.
I was living in 80s pop culture.
Very nice.
Yeah, it would have been 85 because I was 13 timing when this happened.
Yeah, it's a total like John Hughes moment to me. When did you hit your like maturity from a bourbon perspective? When did you start to realize like I'm not going to go drink hot Jack Daniels at the football game anymore,
right?
But I'm actually going to start appreciating some of the finer things.
For me, it started with Scotch. So there was a big move in the 90s, and in the 90s I graduated from A&M and started making pretty decent money pretty quick. And I was hanging out with men way older than me, and they were into cigars and Scotch. And so I got into cigars and Scotch. Cigars would ruin me. I would wake up the next day just ruined. But Scotch I kind of got behind. But that led me to eventually meeting a guy named Brad Henry. Brad runs the Rodeo Goat in Dallas. Rodeo Goat. For those that are out of state, best burger in Dallas, Fort Worth, in my opinion. And Brad introduced Dawn and I, actually, my wife, to Bullet Bourbon, and it tasted so sweet. It tasted like candy compared to Scotch.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of got immediately hooked, and I don't know that I've drank more than 2 or 3 glasses of Scotch since.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so I think we're just a couple of, even with having several years of bourbon drinking experience, I think, we're still pretty average Joes, and the whole point of our channel is we kind of just want to we figured we love reviewing bourbons. We're always texting each other about different types of bourbons, and we want to bring that to you guys. And the whole idea is to stay within an affordable range for the most part. I mean, if we get our hands on some allocated something or other, we'll share it for sure.
I think the general sense that we came up with is something that if someone watched this, they could go with reasonable expectation, go to a liquor store and find it and be able to afford it. And maybe find some tricks of the trade along the way, because there are mash bills, and we can go into that later, but that are the exact same in a $20 bottle as Blanton's or as Basil Hayden or something like that. And that's actually going to be one of our first episodes.
Yeah.
Is we're going to compare Basil Hayden to Old Granddad. Let's get down to the nut cutting.